Yes, yes. Hello, Lucas Nation fans. Welcome back to another exciting Lucas Chat podcast here today. We're live here on Swanky Studios. We're streaming on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Cashbox, and Google Plus, all as well, ladies and gentlemen. And we're getting ready. We're getting ready to start streaming on a new streaming media podcast network called Desert. Desert is this new app that's out there. It's rating about almost to 5 stars. I think it's like 4.8 stars out of 5. So it's the newest platform. One of my executives here at K.L.P. Entertainment just sent in an email to get our content on Desert. So we'll keep you guys up to date when we're on Desert. That will be, I believe, our 7th platform that we're streaming on. So I can't wait for it. Welcome on back here for the Lucas Chat podcast. Of course, we're here to talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But before we get to that, please go be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the YouTube channel of K.L.P. Entertainment. And please, if you're listening to us on either iTunes, iHeartRadio, or Spotify, please share it on your accounts and get the word out there for sure. I cannot wait for the growth of the channel. It's growing now. I just can't wait until we hit that spot and we really nail it out there for you guys. So again, thank you for staying tuned. This past week, you guys been enjoying K.L.P. Entertainment content. We've been doing videos back to back this week. Of course, the Late Show with K.L.P. It's been interesting this week. We had about, 3 episodes released out this week, and you guys just been liking it. You guys been enjoying it. So I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy that you guys been enjoying the content, not only for the YouTube channel, but also on my Instagram account as well. So we're back here, ladies and gentlemen, again. We're going to talk about the hit movie from Quentin Tarantino, of course, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You guys know what I do. I go out to these movies, I see these movies, and I actually like these movies. And, of course, we talk about them on the Lucas Chat podcast. So let's get on to it. So, of course, we're here in the studio talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, this movie, honestly, I have to say it's one of my favorite movies by Quentin Tarantino thus far. A lot of my friends went inside this movie. This is the must-see movie that you must see. Now, again, this goes out to spoiler alert to all of you guys out there. If you haven't seen the movie yet, please stop watching or stop listening to Lucas Chat podcast and please watch the movie first. Because if you don't watch the movie and then you hear us, if you don't watch the movie but then you're listening to the podcast, I might do some spoilers or something like that later on. So, of course, the movie's really good by Quentin Tarantino, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie. So, it's a good film to go see, honestly. It's developed by Columbia Pictures as well. This is Quentin Tarantino's 9th film that he has out there, so it's very interesting to see. Very, very interesting to see how this plays out for sure. Yeah, so this movie really does play out to what we need it to. I honestly encourage people to go see this movie. So it starts off, Leonardo DiCaprio plays Rick Dalton. Of course, Rick Dalton is the new, he is this hit actor. This guy is out here, is in the Hollywood industry, and he wants to, prevail. He wants to seek his fortune. He wants to seek his acting career. He played a character in an old Western TV show, but now things are getting kind of stale. As Hollywood progresses, he's getting kind of stale, so he has to go out there and find himself. So he finds his different roles for sure for the movies. Of course, he's trying to prevail as an actor. He's trying to do his thing. Meanwhile, Brad Pitt is his stunt double. So, Brad Pitt's storyline, if you will, is kind of interesting because Brad Pitt's character, he plays Cliff Booth, a stunt double. So, he's out there, stunt double for Rick Dalton in the Western TV shows. But on his side, his gigs are getting kind of stale. Cliff Booth, his stunt double's not really being used as much as he'd like. So, he's kind of like the best friend of Rick Dalton, but he kind of house sits his stuff because Rick Dalton's out here making the money, and Cliff Booth, he is, the guy who's his best friend. He watches his house, drives his car around, his stunt double. So, that's pretty much his job, right? So he goes around. There's this woman. I believe that was Dakota Fanning. I think there's this woman that she's a hipster. She's poor. She doesn't have much. It was kind of that 1969 era where there's a lot of women that didn't really have much in terms of their money and being independent. So they're walking around the street, and he falls in love at the beginning. He falls in love, but he has second thoughts. Cliff Booth does have second thoughts. Within the movie, she tries to hitch a ride from Cliff Booth. He doesn't give her a ride for the longest in the movie, but then he cave in and gives her a ride because he's at the house while Rick Dalton's doing his thing. He's riding around. He's bored as hell. He repaired his satellite in Rick Dalton's house, but he left because he was just so bored. So he goes around, drives around, sees this hipster, poor hippie person that's out there, picks her up. He falls in love, but then he having second thoughts because she does look young. And he's older. So, he's smart on that concept. He don't want to date someone super young. Even though he's probably having some sexual thoughts about this woman, he doesn't want to do it. So, they go to this old ranch that Cliff Booth and Rick Dalton filmed the Western shows. And things get kind of spicy. It gets interesting. It's kind of like a, I don't want to say a crack house, but it's a place where they go and it's, these hippies are taking over the ranch, and his good friend that owns the ranch gets manipulated by these young hippies. Of course, he's walking around trying to find the owner, and then he finds out, okay, they're taking advantage of, something's up. So he went to go check in on the friend. Cliff Booth thought that the hippies killed the friend that owned the ranch, but he doesn't. He's not dead. He's just sleeping, and he wants sexual flavors from Peanut. I think that's what he called her, Peanut, the one with the red hair. So as the story progresses on, of course, you get to see more of the elements of the Quentin Tarantino style. Of course, there's a scene after he tries to leave. One of the hippies destroys Rick Dalton's tire. So, of course, Brad Pitt, playing Cliff Booth, takes out the tire and the jack, throws it at him, say, "Hey, I need you to fix it." The hippie said no, and then Brad Pitt's Cliff Booth starts beating the living shit out of this guy. And as we saw that, I heard a bunch of people in the audience like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And I'm like, yep, that's Quentin Tarantino. Of course, it's going to be sound effects with gut, blushing blood coming out of the human body. That was that element that we were looking for, and we got it. So Rick Dalton, back to Rick Dalton, of course, it's multiple stories that you can follow within this movie. Rick Dalton, of course, after he does his movies in Hollywood, he goes out of state. Of course, he goes out of the country. He does a lot of Italian films. He goes a lot and do a lot of Italian films. But then his reign is starting to end. He's starting to end his reign a little bit, so he comes back to Hollywood to kind of see if he still got it, or maybe he might just retire. In the movie, he played he plays an evil cowboy in one of the movies that's in that movie. The funny scene is, we all laugh. So Rick Dalton, Leonardo DiCaprio, has this one scene where they're on set, they're doing their thing, they're working, and he forgets his lines. That scene was very funny because his facial expressions was so funny. And then once he got back to the trailer, he started talking to himself, and he was pissed off because he forgot his lines. That whole scene was just so funny to me, because you never thought Leonardo DiCaprio could be that funny, but it was very funny. And actors in real life, they really do that when they forget their lines. They're not supposed to forget their lines, but they did. So it's very, very funny to see, for sure. See him interact and do his thing. It's so funny with that scene. So he forgets his lines, and then it prevails that he get done shooting. He got some money, and he goes out of state to do Italian films. And then he comes back to Hollywood to do more films. Of course, in that movie, Margaret Robbie. I didn't forget about her. Her scenes. Now, a lot of our friends saw the movie too. A lot of people say that her character and her scenes wasn't really necessary in the film. I think it adds another element piece to it. Margaret Robbie plays Sharon Tate, an old actress, in the 1969 era. She plays this actress, and she goes out and see her own movie in the theater. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you see her, and then she's dating. She left one husband for another husband that's also in the Hollywood field. And that's pretty much it for her. It's not really much storyline for her. Towards the end, she gets pregnant, which I'll explain the end in a minute. But there's not really much scenes from her. I mean, that's just, I mean, you would see this movie, you would kind of forget that she's in the movie because she'll appear back on screen, and then you think, oh snap, I forgot she was in this movie. It was kind of like that. Mike Malloy is a good public figure on YouTube and Instagram. He plays Bruce Lee in the movie, so that's really good. It's really good. Quentin Tarantino really likes to stick to the elements of the olds of his actors that goes in these movies. So if you have Leonardo DiCaprio, he's also in Django, another film by Quentin. You've got Kurt Russell played the Hangman in Hateful Eight, and he's playing a director in this movie. So it's just really cool that Quentin is sticking to his roots. Now, towards the end of this movie, y'all, this movie, towards the end, really shows the Quentin Tarantino. So the hippies are coming back. After years later, the hippies come back to kill, they want to kill Cliff Booth. But they ended up stumbling up on Rick Dalton's house, which they kind of stay in the same house together. So Cliff Booth takes this real wacky weed, and he's high as hell. His scenes in that movie when he's high as hell after taking that, and he took his dog out off for a walk. Those scenes were funny. So at the end, really shows Quentin Tarantino's gut blushing, beating the hell out of each other forcefully. So in this scene, the hippies, they try to invade Rick Dalton's house, but they meet Cliff Booth in there, and then Cliff Booth say, oh yeah, I remember you guys are the hippies from the ranch. So shit happens, honestly. That's the best way I can put it. Shit happens in that scene where everyone's getting beat up. The hippies dies. Of course, one hippie is getting ate up by the dog, really ate up like they were a piece of meat. And then the other hippie just gets, dies. I mean, Brad Pitt beats the living shit out of her, and that was Peanut, like, forcefully. Of course, the woman, she was a Chinese woman too, Asian woman who got beat up by the dog, ended up stumbling outside where Rick Dalton was outside, relaxing, rehearsing his lines, listening to music, getting high, and she's burnt up in the pool. She's, she can't see, she's hurt, so he went and got a blowtorch. Rick Dalton went and got a blowtorch and torched her to death. So that's how that movie ends. I know that sounds twisted, and you guys probably like, Kennedy, what is this movie? That's how the movie ended. And of course, the cops came, the hospital came, Cliff Booth is hurt, so Cliff is going to the hospital, and then they have their own moment, like, I love you, man, I love you too. Towards the end, the neighbor comes out and says, hey, everything okay? And then they just talk about it, and then he invites Rick Dalton over to the next door neighbor's house. Next door neighbor turns out to be a super famous actor that, Rick Dalton really admires, and they live right next door to each other. So he goes up to the house, they're talking about what happened that night, and, Margaret Robbie's character, this is where she kind of pop back into the movie. She asks if everything was okay, everyone says yeah, so they invited them in, and that's how the movie ended, a huge twist. Like, you have this long story, a long story, for this movie, about Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth, how they're trying to prevail in the acting career of Hollywood, down to a Quentin Tarantino beatdown, blood gushing towards the end, a complete turnaround. Honestly, I think it was a complete turnaround, and that's what I think what makes this movie so great, is because you never expected that. After seeing the trailers, you thought, okay, it's a good story, it's a good story, and then after seeing the movie in theaters, it's a complete turnaround, a whole turnaround. So again, I cannot finesse on how much this movie is great. If you guys haven't seen this movie, I encourage you guys to go out and see this movie for sure, because this is a movie you do not want to miss for sure at all. So that's going to wrap it up here on the Lucas Chat Podcast. Please go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, out in theaters right now. So if you haven't seen it, please go see it. I think it's going to be nominated for an Oscar later on. So that's going to do it for the Lucas Chat Podcast. Stay tuned for more content later on. You guys have a good, fantastic rest of your day. Stay swanky, everyone.